What's going on, gunfighters? Today I thought we'd do a recap of this season's Steel Challenge and C.M.P service rifle matches. Lessons learned, a little bit about the sport. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way with God Almighty at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am humbled and blessed to serve you as host. Bullet points for a bio in the show notes, because you should care why you're listening to the person you're listening to and whether they know what they're talking about. I think it's one of the main reasons the podcast got started. I've been blessed with quite a bit of real-world first-hand experience, and I like to share that blessing and lessons learned. On that note, lessons learned from this past season of Steel Challenge. Now, I must preface this with, I've shot Steel Challenge a lot in the past, but I took a long break, especially when I was trying to do the podcast full-time. I was like dipping into savings and cashing out Bitcoin and all kinds of things to try and make the podcast a full-time income. So I got out of competition shooting because it was a bit spendy. Anyway, this year I got back into it, working two jobs. I'm doing the private security contracting, which I'm blessed to have that job. Blessed that it pays very well, and still doing the podcast for you guys. So I got back into it this year. I started out shooting my old Steel Challenge competition gun, Smith & Wesson M&P 1.0, the old school. So old that it came with a stainless steel unpainted slide. It was just a regular stainless look. One of the very early Smith & Wesson M&Ps. I switched to those early on when I switched from Glock, whenever those Smith & Wesson M&Ps came out. Got a lot of rounds through that gun, just iron sights, and I thought, if I'm going to go back and shoot competition, I might as well shoot with that gun. And so I did. And if you're not familiar with Steel Challenge, it's like drag racing with a handgun. I don't think I came up with that. I've probably heard it somewhere before. But you stand in a box, or you might run from one box to another box. But it's basically a box, and the buzzer goes off, and you shoot 5 targets as fast as you possibly can, shooting the stop target last. As fast as you can get hits, and that's the key. You can go really fast, but if you miss, you're probably not doing a whole lot. But as fast as you can get a hit on those targets. I like it. It's fast. It's dirty. It's, I think, one of the most applicable to actual defensive gunfighting with a handgun, because it's usually 0 to really fast, really quick, and then it's over. How fast can you go from gun in the holster to getting rounds on target or targets really quickly? So I like Steel Challenge, always have. It's one of my favorites. So that's Smith & Wesson M&P shooting. Going back to iron sights, I've been running a dot for quite a while. I still shoot iron sights often, but not really a big transition there. I cut my teeth on iron sights. I like that M&P. It's a good gun for what it is. I don't think the Smith & Wesson M&P is in the top probably 5 best polymer striker fires today. I don't think it stands the test of time, but it's a good old gun. And here's one of the big lessons. I probably should have shot that the entire season, because what makes a difference is me getting back into the sport and practicing and training the different things that are applicable to that training. Like, for instance, you start with your hands above your head. Now, I still dry fire sometimes and practice with my hands above my head, but not nearly as much as I should. Getting quick draws with hands above head, probably more important than the gun that I'm running. But I switched several times throughout this year. I wanted to run it with one of my go-to favorite carry guns, which is the SIG 226 single action only. So I bought another SIG 226 single action only to run in competition, and I bought a cutout slide and an optic. And getting all that done actually probably cost me a few in competition. I was blessed to win several matches this year, but I didn't win all of them, and part of that was that transition going to a new gun, even though the gun itself was almost certainly better and faster. I figured that out in trial runs, but just switching in the middle of a season, I probably would have been better off running the same gun through the season. So that's a lesson learned. And I probably knew that, but lesson learned there. I probably should have just started with my carry gun, which is a SIG 226, or I should have just finished out the season with the Smith & Wesson M&P and started the next year with the SIG. But I did win several competitions, did get first place several times, so I'm blessed to have done that. I was also blessed to take my wife to her first shooting competition. She shot, and she enjoyed it. And I also took, if you are really a connoisseur of gunfighter life, you may recall that I brought my neighbor's daughter. I taught her to shoot the year before. She had been shooting, got her set up. Her dad, who is supportive of her, and mom, they're not really hardcore into shooting, but they supported her wanting to get into it. They actually bought her a gun. She went and competed in Steel Challenge. She had a good time. Didn't do great, of course. It's her first competition. But she shot and she had a good time. I was impressed with her attitude. She didn't get frustrated. She asked about doing it again, but it was just too late in the season. It never lined up with her school schedule. But that was super cool, getting to take my wife to her first competition and a young girl to her first competition. That was a blessing. And that's a lesson for you guys. If you're into competition shooting, well, first of all, if you're not into competition shooting, get into it. If you're serious about shooting. And then if you can, introduce somebody else. If probably not at first when you're first getting into it, unless you just want to bring a buddy, but after you kind of know the ropes, you don't even have to be great at it yet. Just when you know the ropes and you understand what's going on and you can be safe, because that's a big part of getting into competition, to just learning how to be safe with all the different rules. But once you have that footing, bring somebody else into it and introduce them to it. So that'll lead me into the next thing. When I was shooting Steel Challenge this year, I noticed there, I showed up and the range we normally use was being used, and I walked up there and I realized quickly, this is not Steel Challenge. It was C.M.P. service rifle competition, civilian marksmanship service rifle competition, which is well over 100 years old, that discipline of competition shooting, designed to get American men good with military service rifles so that if and when they had to defend the country, they would be good with it. Now, I had never shot C.M.P. before. I had shot the old school Olympic 4-position, N.R.A. 4-position, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, which is quite similar, except we did that with competition rifles and not service rifles. Obviously, I'm blessed to be good with the service rifle. If you see the bio in the show notes, I was blessed to be a expert rifleman in the Marine Corps, back with the old crappy A2s with iron sights. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. I'm familiar with the service rifle. I'm familiar with shooting with a sling. The cool thing about service rifle is it's not this stupid, impractical thing that I think much of today's rifle shooting has become, where you shoot an 18-pound rifle off a bench. That's a test of the rifle. It's not a test of you. Service rifle is very much a test of you. It's unsupported, meaning you can't rest your rifle on anything. You shoot standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. You should look up the course of fire. But there are slow fire stages and there are rapid fire stages. I'm going to go through all the stages of the course of fire, but that would probably get quite dry. You can look it up if you want. But I just brought my one of my go-to fighting ARs that I have for fighting. That's a truck gun. I brought a SIG Tread, which is their entry-level AR, and it did commendably. Now the first competition I showed up to, I just brought what I had, and I didn't actually read the rules. Nobody called me on it, but just to be honest, the next time, that rifle was pretty much stock except for, and it fit in the service rifle category, except for it had a flat trigger. I like a flat trigger. I'm pretty sure I shoot a flat trigger better. I like the flat trigger in my pistols. I like flat triggers in my rifles. If I can get a full flat trigger, I like it. And I like a single stage trigger. But that competition called for a curved 2-stage trigger. Now, I don't think it's a huge advantage, but service rifles have curved triggers. So I went and bought a curved trigger. I had some trials and tribulations with that. I can't really endorse Rise Armament. I bought their 2-stage, 4.5 pound, which is what they regulate in C.M.P. 4.5 pound 2-stage. I bought a Rise Armament. I never tried them. I figured I'll try them. I couldn't find one in the trigger brand I normally like. And their first one I got, it was bad. It was gritty. It felt like a Glock trigger in a rifle, which Glock triggers are horrible enough in a Glock, let alone when you're trying to, shoot the simulated 600-yard prone stage with a trigger like that. It was bad. And I wrote a 2-star review, just being honest. It was a bad trigger. They sent me another trigger. I put it in. It was better. I would definitely say that one is better than a mil-spec GI trigger. So that was nice, except for the first competition I ran it in, the trigger pin came out. Trigger pin that they supplied with their trigger came out of the gun. I used a pocket knife and duct tape to get through the match. So that's some trials and tribulations there. But I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to next season of C.M.P. I shot a little bit better every time. My last score was a 445 for those that are in C.M.P. and know about it. And again, that's with my go-to truck gun. Nothing special, nothing fancy. It's a good rifle, the Sig Tread. That's why I shot it. I will probably I'm looking forward to building a dedicated, or not, I'll probably shoot outside of C.M.P., but a rifle that's more geared towards C.M.P., like a 20-inch barrel would be advantageous. A better trigger. They allow you up to a 4.5 power optic. I'll probably just stick with a 4 power optic, dedicated for, more tailored for C.M.P. You're shooting a black circle. So a black circle with a black crosshairs, like I shot this year. It can be done. I did it, but not great. Some kind of, and I generally don't like electronics, but it's a competition, right? It's not a life or death rifle. So probably an illuminated reticle, just so I can see it on the black silhouette or the black circle of the target. That 600-yard circle and the black reticle is kind of hard to see. So, I might tailor something towards that. Put it on just a regular GI type lower. Nothing fancy there, but the big thing, the trigger, the optics. Trigger optics, 20-inch barrel. But it's a good discipline, and if you are looking to be a good rifleman, not a man with a fancy rifle that can set it on a bench and the gun's so heavy and the trigger's so light that if you whacked it with a hammer, you'd probably still hit the target. But you want a test of your skill as a rifleman. You want to grow as a rifleman. I would highly encourage you to shoot C.M.P. service rifle. It's a very widely distributed discipline. There's clubs all over the country, so I'd encourage you to look at it, especially if you're on the East Coast. There's a ton on the East Coast. But it's a very good discipline if you want to be an actual rifleman, knowing how to shoot standing, like routinely hitting a fairly small target at 200 yards standing. Right? That's I think a thing that is fading fast from American gun culture. People are so worried about widgets and fidgets and turns and dials and buttons and knobs, and look how tiny sub-MOA group I can shoot off a bench. Well, that's cool. What about in a real-world situation where you have to pick the rifle up and actually use it, like a man? What about that? So if you're interested in that kind of shooting, consider C.M.P. service rifle. Is it the most practical for modern gunfighting? No, but it's way more practical than shooting off a bench, and it's the foundation of being a good rifleman. If you can't shoot standing stationary, then you probably can't shoot very well on the move. Right? That's just a reality. It's not going to get easier when you're moving and they're moving and you're wearing body armor. Right? It's probably not going to get easier. So if you don't have a firm foundation, you're not going to be good at all the advanced stuff. C.M.P. service rifle can give you a firm foundation. So I would encourage you to shoot it. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully you're interested in getting into competition. If you're not already, I would really, really encourage it. Training classes, getting training, and competition. I would highly encourage that. If you have heretofore not had a formal training class, I'm not talking about like a CCW class, I'm talking about a shooting instruction class. I would really encourage you to do that and or shooting competitions. Anyway, with that, how about the tactical verse of the day? Psalm 28, the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.